Boston Common is acclaimed as a historic green space and as a magnet for public gatherings. Over time, that means a good deal of wear and tear. And thanks to money connected with a major development, there will be $28 million for repairs and revitalization. To tell us about the planning process for how the money should be spent are our Boston Parks Commissioner Ryan Woods and the Executive Director of the Friends of the Public Garden, Liz Vizza. Thank you both for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
I want to start with Ryan. Before we get into vision and revitalization, I guess there must be things in the common that definitely need to be fixed. So what are we talking about here?
There's some cracked pathways. The park is very well loved and well used. The frog pond, for example, the refrigeration system that keeps the ice frozen, has failed on us many years ago. So we're paying upwards of $75,000 to $80,000 a year just to rent a chiller in order to keep the frog pond frozen, so people can enjoy skating throughout the winter.
If you go back in history, they didn't have skating 400 years ago unless the winter were really cold. But I imagine this is a piece of space where the uses have changed over time, isn't it?
Well, it's always been the center stage of civic life since 1634. And way back then, there were cows grazing on there, there were military training, and then, of course, the British were encamped there for 9 years before the Revolution began. There were hangings. There were always protests and celebrations. This has always been a place, a ground where Bostonians have come to join together to celebrate and protest. So, yes.
I remember some great rock concerts that the neighbors were very unhappy about, too.
Yes, there were those. And today there's a tremendous amount of permanent events. Only just the permanent events are over 500 events a year. So it sees a lot of organized use as well as just free passive use for people in the neighborhood.
Right, there's a process going on here, and what I find interesting is that you're not just asking people questions right at the Common itself, but you're going to places as far off as Maverick Square, Brigham Circle. Why cast the net like that?
We're firm believers that this is the people's park. So instead of our normal community process where we might be just downtown doing 3 meetings at a nearby auditorium that could hold a large capacity, we're really going out to the neighborhoods, going along the transit routes. And the Friends of the Public Garden, the Boston Parks Department teamed up with Weston and Sampson. They're leading this master plan design for us. And they're really doing little parklets where they're going out. They were at Maverick Tea Station the other day. They were out for a festival on the Common. They'll be coming to, I think, the Greenway soon. This weekend they're going to open Newberry, really just to go out into the neighborhoods and get feedback, because it's not just one community's park, this is the people's park. So people from all over come, use this park, love this park, have many memories in this park, and should be involved in the redesign.
Liz, I know this is still at an early stage, but anything you're hearing about some of the ideas, some of the responses from people?
Well, we've now got over 3,200 responses. And many people love this park, and it's a really important part of their life. There's over 800 people that have left stories of their and their families and their ancestors' life on the park. People love the trees, they love the lawns, they want to come and have it be a natural place in the center of Boston. But then there are some concerns. People do see the warts, they see the broken pavement, the broken curbing, they like those things to be fixed. There have been safety concerns expressed. Our public spaces are the expression of our social challenges, and it's seen in full view in a park, because parks are democracy and trees and dirt, as Olmsted said. Everyone is welcome. So we would say all housed and unhoused and poor and rich people are welcome in a park, but not all activities are welcome. So there are some illicit activities, drug dealing, and the things that are challenging for urban parks nationally we deal with in the Common as well.
Ryan, what about that? Is there a way that you can at least manage those problems better through some kind of revitalization or redesign?
Hopefully, we're trying to make the park more welcoming, more inviting, really soften the edges, the entrances, make them more inviting for everyone to come on, make sure everyone feels safe, feel welcomed, and make sure they're really well-maintained spaces. We're currently working with Boston Public Health Commission, Boston Police, the Boston Park Rangers, as well as the Friends of the Public Garden on a range of issues now. But we think when we get this feedback in, we'll really move forward with the design and really make this a park that everyone feels welcome and everyone wants to come to.
Liz, I want to ask you about one change in the Common in recent years. I wouldn't call it a radical change, but I guess it's kind of a beneficial, and that's the Brewer Fountain revitalization. Mm-hmm. Explain how something like that can change the character, at least a part of the Common.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Chris, because that is an expression of how do you reclaim a space. the Parks Department took the lead in restoring the fountain about 9-10 years ago and worked with us to make that happen. And then we took that and expanded it to restoring the landscape around it. And then we said, if we just restore the landscape and don't activate it, we will not have totally reclaimed that space. So now, after a $4.5 million restoration, we activate it every year. We bring tables and chairs and food trucks. A piano gets rolled out of the frog pond every day, and we hire Berkeley students to play jazz in the afternoon, and during the lunch hour we have the free daily paper. And today you can't get a place to sit on a beautiful summer lunch hour, where it used to be a place that literally thousands of people would walk past every day. The fountain was broken for about 10 years and people weren't welcome, didn't feel welcome. So we always say that positive activity can drive out negative activity. So in fact, you can go there and find a table full of unhoused people that are just sitting among all the other people. Some of those people actually help us lock up the tables and chairs at the end of the day. So it's a really beautiful example of a successful public space.
Right, what's the difference from you as the official in charge of keeping things in good shape here? Because I think what Liz is talking about, people are getting really engaged with the space as opposed to just driving through it or walking through it. Doesn't that make things better for you?
It does, and Liz hit it right on the head there. The more positive activity that happens in a park pushes away negative activity and behavior. So we love to see people out there, whether they're playing Frisbee, walking their dogs, visiting the Earless Sandwich, taking in a tennis game or a baseball or softball game, or enjoying the frog pond. Really, that activity is what we'd like to see in the park, and that makes the park the great place that it is today.
What about some of the changes in the future? Because there's going to be a new monument to Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King. Isn't that going to change the character as well a bit?
We're going to be looking in terms of the master plan at all of the layers in the park, the monumental layer, the green space. So that's one of the layers that will be looked at comprehensively. We welcome that new monument. We think the time is now, and probably the time was yesterday, to have a monument to the Kings. So I would say that the Parks Department and the other departments, the Art Commission, the Landmarks Commission, are working closely with King Boston. We are contributing whatever we can constructively to help make sure that monument is the most successful thing it can be within this park.
Right, what about the impression that the Common makes on people who are really outside Boston, and not just outer neighborhood, we're talking about from places around the world. Mm-hmm. I've seen more and more people, they stop at the monument to the 54th Regiment, and they go to some of the other places. Yeah. How does that factor in here? We
consider the Boston Common really to be the welcome mat, if you will, to Boston. This is the place where everyone comes to start the Freedom Trail. This is where they stop to see the Shaw 54th. It's where they stop to see the State House, take a tour. This really should be that welcoming, inviting place that everyone wants it to be and it deserves to be. So this process is hopefully helping us get there. So everyone's first impression, so now people won't look at the Boston Common as America's oldest park, but look at it as America's first park.
Liz, what about parts of the Common that might strike people as underused? Most of the time, for instance, I think of that in connection with the parade ground. And I know that's an important staging area for a lot of events, but most days of the week, it looks like it's just sort of barren. What about that?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. That is the largest area, open area, and the garage is underneath. And when we do a public event, that's the most logical place for it to be done. So again, we're going to be looking at these 50 acres and really looking at them with fresh eyes. Like, what are the uses of all this acreage in the Common? Are they the best uses that there can be? Is there any way of reorganizing some of the things that are there to make some areas work better and different? And once we get more feedback from people to see what the recreational areas, the ball fields, the tennis courts, how are they used? So I think that space it is over the garage, so things cannot be built over there, and that's one caveat. But it is important in the park to have a large open space where those events can take place.
Right. I also noticed over the years there is this change in the property use along Boylston Street, and most of the space between Charles Street and Tremont, it almost looks as if the Common is turning its back on what's across the street. It doesn't really engage people from that side. Is that something that maybe could be changed in some way?
I think so. One of the main goals, we agree that it is not a welcoming area, especially on the Boylston Street edge. So that is one major piece, hopefully an early action item of this master plan, to really make sure all the edges, but especially the Boylston Street side, is welcoming. We get more people to come in the park and they feel welcome coming into the park.
Liz, when people give ideas, what do you want them to think of? Is this always about the infrastructure of the park, or could it be about things going on in the park too.
Absolutely. We want to hear about youth. We want to hear about, and clearly, it's very obvious what the physical condition is and what the needs are there. Some of the unobvious but really necessary things are drainage and those infrastructure things. But we want to hear about youth activities. Do people want more structured activities? And there are some people that have responded to the survey and talk about that desire to have more things to do when they get there. And I would just underscore what Ryan said. All of the entrances in the common need to be more welcoming. You know, a lot of them are underperforming. Many of them have too much hardscape. And how can we make this a really welcoming park at all of the entrances?
Well, I know you have a number of events still coming up, and you want people to also even express themselves online. So is there a website they can go for that?
There is a website. What is the address?
It is bostoncommonmasterplan.com.
There you go.
So that allows you to take the survey and see all the upcoming events where the crew will be out in the neighborhoods to get feedback.
Thank you both very much. Ryan Woods and Liz Vizza.